Buenas tardes. Vamos a leer otro pensamiento. Los espíritus nos dicen que el conocimiento es un bien que por más que se almacena, jamás ocupa espacio. Por el contrario, faculta más amplias facilidades para nuevas adquisiciones. Las buenas lecturas enriquecen la mente, calman el corazón y estimulan el progreso.
Estamos seguros que esta tarde nos van a estimular, gracias a Vanessa, que va a estar con nosotros ahora hablándonos de Allan Kardec, Fundamentos de la Filosofía Espírita. Ella es neurocientífico y profesora asistente en la Universidad de Maryland, es presidenta y fundadora de la Sociedad Spiritista de Baltimore, en Maryland, Estados Unidos. Es una de los oradores espíritas más activos de América. Participa en congresos, seminarios, simposios y lleva a cabo reuniones de mediunidad, tratamientos espirituales y talleres en los Estados Unidos y en el resto del mundo. Sus talleres se inspiran fundamentalmente sobre el concepto del control de las emociones y su papel en nuestra salud integral. Sus análisis de la neurociencia a la psicología y las enseñanzas espíritas profundas pueden impulsar a los cambios de vida de cada uno de nosotros si, lógicamente, nos dejamos aconsejar por aquellos que tienen más conocimiento que nosotros. Ahora, por favor, Vanessa Anceloni.
Estimados hermanos y hermanas espíritas, me gustaría muchísimo hablar en el español, mas ahora invito a vosotros para juntar fuerzas conmigo para podermos hablar un otro idioma que necesita de enseñamientos también sobre el espiritismo, la lengua inglesa. Welcome everyone. We're going to begin now our session on reflections about Allan Kardec and the fundamentals about the Spiritist philosophy. To talk about Allan Kardec and the fundamentals of the Spiritist philosophy, we need to recall the amazing spirituality of Kardec himself and his wife, Amélie Gabrielle Boudet. We know very little about herself and the much that he, as Allan Kardec himself and his wife, have provided to all of us. It reminds me of the story of this master who was often available to the public when an apprentice came to him. He was very excited about learning new things and approached the master with this great excitement that sometimes we feel when we are close to Divaldo Franco, Chico Xavier, and others. And this master invited this apprentice to have tea with him. They sat at the table. The teacups were right in front of them. And then the master turned to the apprentice and said, "Would you like to have some tea?" And he said, "Yes, master, please. So please tell me, what have you come here for?" And then, while the apprentice started telling him how much he was looking forward to learning new things, he then started pouring the water of the tea on the teacups. Very soon, the water started spilling out of the cups. Meanwhile, the apprentice kept telling about the things he wanted to learn with the apprentice. I want to learn this, and I want to learn that, and etc., etc., etc. Then, suddenly, the master kept pouring the water, and the apprentice realized that something was off with the master. So he turned to the master and said, "Hey, master, excuse me, but do you realize that the water is spilling out of the cup?" And he said, "Yes, I do. That's why you need to empty your cup first." Allan Kardec was the type of apprentice in life that no matter his 55 years of experience in life, he had his teacup emptied out when he was before the Spiritist phenomena. Allan Kardec was such an educator and a visionary that teaches us to date this amazing experience that before we revisit the fundamentals of the Spiritist philosophy, we need to empty out our teacups as well. Otherwise, we'll mix the teachings with everything else that has come, the loaded baggage that we bring from many experiences. When Allan Kardec got to know of the teachings before he published the Spirit's book, he had a choice. How many were the people who actually got to know of spirit phenomena at the time? Many. William James, Ernesto Bolzano, William Crookes, and many others. But Allan Kardec was different. He could see the therapeutic features behind the spirit phenomena. As Carol Bowman yesterday showed to us, beyond the evidences of life, we need the healing therapy of life. What is the use to us knowing that we reincarnate if we don't know how to deal with the facts that we bring features from previous lives that need to be recycled? Allan Kardec was such a visionary that at his time, he got married to a woman that was older than him, which was quite unusual. And second, he used to share with her his thoughts, feelings, very much like the second president of the United States of America, John Adams, quite unique in his marital skills. Like Kardec, he used to share his visions, his understanding, his strategies for the foundation of the new country in the Americas. Allan Kardec then one day, with all the teachings at hand, before the publishing of the Spirit's book, he turned to his wife, Amélie Gabrielle Boudet, and said, "Amélie, if these teachings are good and useful for us, if they are truly transformative, it shall be transformative to others as well," the educator's vision. And then he compiled in such a way that the Spirit's book is now a manual for our souls. We often say that people sometimes claim that they need manuals to understand one another. Well, actually, since 1857, we got a manual for all of us. So if somebody doesn't understand us, we hand them the Spirit's book and say, "Here you go, the manual and the map of my soul." The same for all of us. When we read it, we get to know pretty much how the dynamics of our psyche works, and then how we can improve it and transform itself. This is what Allan Kardec did to all of us. He then proposed that we should meditate about who we are, what happens to us, beginning with our foundation. We are nobody without God. God is this omnipresent presence in our lives. this omniscience, this omnipotency. God can any and everything. And without God, who are we? We are nobody. Then Kardec invites us to bring God to our lives. Kardec himself brought God from the churches, rescued God, and brought God in our lives. There is no intermediary anymore between you and God, between us and God. The distance between us and God is non-existent because God is this omnipresence, is this present, constant presence in our lives. Does it change the way we feel about life and ourselves? Totally. Absolutely. It changes the way we see ourselves in the mirror tomorrow, because then when we look at ourselves, we're gonna look at ourselves as if we were admiring, staring at this painting that has become a masterpiece. That's the reason why it's crucial for us to understand that whenever we put ourselves down, we don't believe in ourselves, we are not only insulting ourselves, we're actually insulting the Creator. In an analogy that recently was brought to us by a good spirit, he said, it's as if you were looking at a painting next to the painter, and you turned to the painting and said, this painting is iffy. Next to the painter. This is what happens to us when we look at ourselves and we don't believe in ourselves. And we think we are less than we really are. We are looking at the painter of the universe and we're saying, this painting here is iffy. It's not our problem anymore. Then we are turning to God and saying, it's your problem because you created me imperfect. I don't like that. So then that's why Jesus said we should love others as we love ourselves first. Turning to ourselves and working on appreciating this painting that we are. We are the paintings of God. Right here and now, it's as if we were in this beautiful gallery of life. Each and every one of us is a representation of God's creation. We are the true expression of God's mind. We are not imperfect. We get to know with Allan Kardec that actually we are perfectible. God hasn't created us imperfect, but perfectible. And in that, we get to know even more that when we pray, it's not something subjective. Our prayers are so real, so touchable, that our body responds to it. How do we know of it? Amazing scientists like Andrew Newberg showed to us at Penn State University that our brain actually responds to prayer. We can see that when we are meditating, praying, areas such as the frontal lobe change their activation. So next time people say, oh, well, you pray too much, what is that for? I know somebody who used to tell me, Anissa, you're too prayerful. I don't know why you pray that much. And then one day I got the answer, which probably came from the skies, because I was flying last year from Belgium to the United States. And then in this trip, there was great turbulence. And in this great turbulence, I was scared, of course. But then I reminded myself of Chico Xavier's experience when he got to know from Emmanuel that we should die in an educated and polite manner. So I said, you know, that's a lesson for all of us, not only for Chico. And then I started praying. And of course, when you have fear inside of you, psychology explains that you bring features from the past and probably from a previous life. I started praying with my hands closed tightly to one another, praying, and of course tears were rolling down my eyes, and I was like blessing everybody, saying, guys, if I don't see you this life anymore, I'm fine, love you, all of you, see you sometime in the spirit realm, next life, whenever. And that's when a guy that was seated next to me, he held my arm. He was probably 2 times taller and bigger than I am. He asked me, can I hold your arm? And I said, please go ahead, because we're gonna die anyways. Fine. And then I was like, oh my Lord. And then praying. And then suddenly the turbulence was off. I breathed deeply. He did as well. He started talking to me, and then we started chatting. I shared with him about the Spiritist magazine, and then he shared about his projects in Liberia, Africa, which was quite interesting. He's an engineer who is close friends with the president of Liberia, started talking about a foundation that exists in the United States to help Liberia, a country that I heard about but didn't know much. And then I got this information, should pay closer attention to that. We started, when we landed in Baltimore, Maryland, we kept contacting each other. They invited me over for a conference call in their organization. And then suddenly I was immersed in these Liberian projects. The SSB put together this immense book drive of hundreds of pounds of books. And in the next 6 months, we had hundreds of pounds of books that were sent to Liberia thanks to turbulence and prayer. So Kardec was right. Prayer is something so real that it not only connects us to God, but connects us to one another. And in that regard, Andrew Newberg proved to us that Kardec's statement is very likely to be true. That though, through a sincere prayer, which is a spirit magnetization, one induces a quicker disaggregation of the perispiritual fluid in the gospel according to Spiritism. And through that, we learn with Kardec that we are prone to evolve. We're not here to be the way we are. Different from the painting, we evolve. It's those living paintings in the universe that become prettier and prettier and prettier over time. How does that happen? With experience such as the one of what we call this evolution in 2 worlds that Andrea Luiz explained to us so well. We were created simple and ignorant, not at human level, because sincerely, humanly speaking, as a scientist, we can barely understand the brain inside of our skull. Imagine if we could believe ourselves that we are created simple and ignorant. No, we are not created simple and ignorant at human level. It's way before, when we were spiritual principles, doing these internships in matter from the mineral to the vegetable, animal, and then the human kingdom. It's this spiritual progress that happens to us. And through that, we have these beautiful bodies responding to our consciousness. And a parenthesis here. Andrea Luiz, as the spirit doctor, he teaches us in the book Evolution in 2 Worlds, chapters 5 and 6, these trillions of cells, they are actual, like little animals. He named it animalculos. And he says, these are cellular consciousness depending on us. So next time you go home and feel alone, Be in solidarity with the little cells in your body. When Dr. Ender brought to us the teaching that we only feel alone when we're not in solidarity with others, solidarity begins within ourselves. We cannot enslave anymore the physical bodies. For centuries, probably millennia, we have been enslaving the physical bodies, giving it junk food, not giving it proper rest, not giving it the proper care. So in the United States of America, we teach our children at the Spiritist Society of Baltimore how they should actually learn this practice of patting the body, treating the body as if it were a pet. And we adore pets, cats and dogs and birds, whatever they are, but we have pets here. Like André Louis said, these little consciences, they need ourselves. Do you talk to them? Sometimes we are physically impaired, and then we start being angry at those parts of our body. With the teachings of Allan Kardec, we learn that we should actually appreciate it because they are simply responding to our commands. Our bodies, we cannot enslave it anymore. Sometimes we starve it to death. Sometimes we don't give it the care that it's needed, the proper hygiene sometimes, or the proper outfit to show how this temple is respectful as well, as beautiful as it may be, but respected. We should be reverent to those cells, respecting the nature of all of them. So in this process of evolution, Allan Kardec is teaching us that here lies actually this order of higher life of evolution. And in that regard, we learn not only that, we learn that inside of all of us, there are emotions. Nowadays, neuroscience, through the amazing leader of the neurobiology of emotions, named a Portuguese neuroscientist who lives in California, United States, Antonio Damasio, he teaches us that our reasoning depends on our emotional processing. We are emotional beings. It's likely that the 21st century, our schools need a true revolution in regard to teaching us the emotional education. How should we educate our emotions? By repressing them or by liberating them totally? We need schools for emotions, and Spiritism, since Kardec's time, is at the vanguard of this proposal. How do we know it? In the Gospel according to Spiritism, we get to know that our emotions are things that evolve. This is actually in chapter 11, item 8. In the first paragraph of this item, Kardec is teaching us, through the teachings of the spirits at the time, that actually emotions, they evolve from instincts. From instincts, we get it to sensations, from sensations to actual feelings. Some things in our lives are still at emotional, instinctive level. Maybe your anger management is still, let's say, fictitiously, at instinctive level. If somebody says something, you whip it out with something else. But then, let's say, in regard to generosity, you are already at the feeling level. So generous that if somebody needs your coat, you would not think twice by sharing the coat with that person. Some things inside of us are already at feelings. Others are still at instinctive level. And Spiritism says, work on it. Work on it. Transform yourself. Dominate your bad tendencies. Let's rename it. These unhealthy tendencies. And then, so much so, the proposal of Spiritism in its philosophy is a way of living that nowadays with science, we get to know that actually the spirits of the codification were right. When they proposed that we became more reconciliatory. How did they do that? How did they propose something that people think it's impossible? Some people tell me, but to forgive, Vanessa, no, too hard. I can't get over it. Well, science since the year 2000 has taught us that we not only have the violent instincts inside of us, but we actually have the genes that predispose us to be conciliatory. Who told us so? Several scientists, amongst them, Franz de Waal from iMovie University. When he taught us in studies like this one, this is an actual picture that he published in this very renowned scientific journal, Science. He showed to us, by studying primates, like the chimpanzees, that after a conflict, they actually seal their reconciliation with a mouth-to-mouth kiss, much like human beings. We're not the only ones. It's not only the primates, but it's what he calls the phylogenesis that brings those characters to the human species. And here we are. So the spirits were not kidding with us when they proposed that we work on ourselves to become conciliatory. They actually were proposing to us something that is ingrained, that is inside of us. And in that regard, they said, if you can't make it in one life, well, there are many lives. Many lives, and like Brian Weiss said once in one of his books, many masters, the masters within ourselves, because we learn with our own selves. We can only recognize the wisdom of someone if we know of it. This is something that only, for example, in the Portuguese or the Latin languages, we can understand very clearly with the root meaning. We can only recognize something if we know of it. Nós podemos conhecer uma coisa, reconhecer se la conocemos, primeiramente. This concept is something that is within ourselves. I can only recognize the wisdom of the Christ if that is already inside of me. Because many looked at Jesus and couldn't understand him and still don't. And here we are to grasp a little more about it. So Kardec says we have many opportunities, and that opportunity is named what? Reincarnation. It's when we get this new body, this newly formed body, in such a way that science again brings to us that this way of living is not a fictitious choice, but an actual scientific understanding already. Like the teachings that Carol Bowman brought to us, and when she mentioned Dr. Stevenson, clearly in many of his scientific journals and then the books that he shared with the lay public, we get to know of the many evidences on our many existences and the healing aspect of reincarnation. That's our focus. We're here again to know more, know less than to evolve, to progress. And in that regard, we get to know with Spiritism that sometimes in between these lives, we'll feel this uncertainty. An uncertainty that has a wisdom in itself. A wisdom that Deepak Chopra clearly states to us that belongs to the laws of life. And that's why Jesus says, do not resist evil or the changes or the uncertainties of life. They are teaching us something. Deepak Chopra, in other words, teaches us as well to bless this uncertainty of the new in each and every reincarnation, because there are many people who are reincarnated, but they have not spiritually reincarnated. They are still attached to previous lives' personalities. How many of us are seated here feeling that it's just a part of us here, and another part of us is living elsewhere? Sometimes at our home countries, sometimes at countries that we lived before. Personalities that sometimes were so strong that still don't allow us to form this more homogeneous personality. Why? Because we are afraid of the new. We are afraid of the new environment, the new family, the new circumstances that surround us all. So then the teaching that Spiritist brings to us in this philosophy of life, of living, is the same that Deepak Chopra brings to us. And we bring Deepak Chopra and others here to show how Allan Kardec was bringing to us universal teachings, teachings that are widespread in all different cultures. Deepak Chopra tells us, in this wisdom of uncertainty lies the liberation of the past, of the known, which is the prison of the past conditioning. So whenever we are stepping in a circumstance that I find, this is new to me, it's puzzling, immediately and instinctively, I will tend to run away from it. I'll tend to be frozen, like animal instinct. If you present to an animal something that threatens its survival, it's going to make two choices, one of the two choices, either flight, run away, or fight. How often these are the only options that we find in life? This is animal level. At human level, we need to have a third option, which is to work on it. Tara Brach, this amazing psychologist from Washington, D.C., she wrote this book, Radical Acceptance. Same teaching as Jesus. Do not fight against, do not resist evil. The evil of uncertainty, of the unknown, of the not knowing. What do? We surrender to it. And she teaches us practically how? By breathing. Breath is our way of grounding ourselves in the present now. Right here now. If you close your eyes for a minute, allow me to walk you into this practice you can use in your daily life. Whenever you're presented something that makes you feel resistant to it, think about this. You have two choices. Surrender to the wisdom of this uncertainty, or fight against it. When you fight against it, it's as if you're putting a knife in your hand. And if you try it now, put your finger in the middle of your hand, push it, and then resist it. It hurts more, doesn't it? Does it hurt more? It does. So what do? You do as Jesus said, do not resist it. Let it be. And with our breathing, we can let it be. How? If you close your eyes for a minute and you breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply, it's our way of grounding ourselves in the present and finding this non-resistant state. Jesus never resisted anything. And Spiritism teaches us this wisdom, a wisdom that will ground us in the present moment, which is, as Eckhart Tolle told us very clearly, that actually when we are not in the present, we are actually living this negativity. When we are living too much in uneasiness, anxiety, tension, worry, and fear, we are living too much in the future. when we are actually feeling guilt, regret, resentment, sadness, and bitterness, we are living too much in the past. Jesus did none of these two things. And Kardec taught us this in the Gospel according to Spiritism, teaching us that we should live in the present, eliminating those two possibilities there. And in such a way that feelings such as envy become non-existent. Science in the year 2009, through a Japanese group, showed to us that envy is so painful that it stimulates in our brain areas such as this, which is named the anterior cingulate cortex. When you're feeling envious, you are stimulating an area in your brain that is correlated to pain processing. That's why the Japanese researchers wrote this article in the journal Science. First paragraph, they say, of all the sins that people talk about, envy is the only one that has no pleasure in itself but pain. Why? They researched on it, and they saw clearly that envy is painful. We can tell clearly that envy, people who are feeling envious, they are in extreme pain. So those feelings are to be eliminated through our experiences in a reincarnation, in such a way that we learn that this, what we call the La Reforma Íntima, the inner transformation, it's a process. When we read the book Paul and Stephen by Emmanuel, we read that Paul had to walk from Saul to Paul. We walk this stairway of transformation step by step. Nobody knows that inside of us there is this transformative being. And it's only on us to go from the desert of our anguishes to the cave of our fears, and then to submerge into the beauty of life when we start serving others, like Paul. And when he learned to serve without ego, he found himself. He became one with Christ. He became one with God in such a way that he got to know that we are never alone. We are surrounded by this cloud of witnesses everywhere and elsewhere, all the time. This is one of the fundamentals of the Spiritist philosophy that transform our lives. When we learn that actually the spirits interact with us in such a way that Kardec asked the spirits, is it possible that the spirits see our thoughts and influence in our actions? And they said, to a greater extent than you imagine. So, if you imagine it's this much, it's greater. But if you think it's this much, it's greater. Whatever you think it is, that's what the teachings of Spiritism are telling us. It's greater. So we need to watch out. We need to pay attention. We need to turn the eyes to the inside of us and observe what's happening here now. That's why emotional education is going to become key for the social transformation on Earth on the 21st century. And certainly Spiritism plays a role in that regard. Our Spiritist centers need to be empowered to put together programs aligned with the Spiritist philosophy to educate not only our next generations, but the generations that are still living here to be transformed emotionally speaking. As an American friend told me once, Vanessa, I find in the Spiritist Center a true school for emotions, for emotional and spiritual education. Otherwise, we will learn with the spirits that actually, when we communicate with spirits, we are all mediums anyways. The fact that we reflect thoughts and attune with other minds makes us mediums. And if we don't watch out, we're going to undergo these symbiotic challenges that can become true obsessions. Obsessions that one day can happen at our very tables, as we learn in the book Missionaries of Light. When André Luiz turned to the spirits that were next to him and said, "What are these spirits eating with incarnates?" And he said, "Oh yeah, how come?" He asked, "Do they really eat with them?" "Oh yes, they do. They are a group of people that are related to them due to morbid attachments." Is that possible? Is that possible? Why does that happen? Because our homes are not aligned spiritually speaking. Thus, we open the doors of our spiritual defenses. So we're going to change the way we eat when we leave here today. At our next break, we're going to look around our tables and see who is eating with us here at the hotel, back home, knowing that we are never alone. We have spirit company in such a way that we're going to learn that the climax of life becomes the spirit of service. This spirit of service that becomes, as we say in this amazing teaching, this natural and spontaneous expression of one's inner growth and awareness of the connection with the source of all. And thus, learning the magic trick of serving others like we have been learning with many, like Raul Teixeira, Divaldo Franco, and the amazing Chico Xavier as well. And as such, understanding finally that the climax of the fundamentals of Spiritism lie in this statement: without charity, there is no foundation. A charity that lies in this heart connection, a heart connection that the Nobel Prize Elizabeth Blackburn taught us very clearly, that in our DNAs we have the end caps named telomeres that can be reduced if we're under stress, but they can be recovered or be protected when we feel compassionate. The Nobel Prize of last year in medicine taught us many lessons, and this one. So we can truly raise our consciousness to other levels, as was taught by Robert de Ropp, the biochemist that taught us that we need to go from this deep sleep of dream state into higher levels until we reach the so-called cosmic consciousness. It's this secret charity that Jesus taught us so well. When he was among the disciples, and the disciples couldn't understand or grasp what it means to be charitable, and Jesus said, it's this compassion. And if you don't know what it is, it's like this guy. He didn't have any money, but he decided to be charitable in a different way. He said, I'm going to help others in a different way. How? By eliminating bad thoughts, by not allowing people to speak ill of others, by avoiding completely not sharing the goodness of others with one another, until he understood actually that whenever people were angry, they were actually not feeling well in their minds. One day, this guy, Jesus said, just like ourselves, he crossed over and he was in the spirit realm. He was there, seated, waiting for his turn to get to this inner reflection, and the angel came along and offered him the crown of secret charity. And Jesus told us, it is in this secret charity that lies the secret of our lives. Like we've learned with André Luiz and Chico Xavier, these teachings that may bring us into true connection with the missionaries of light, allowing the messengers of the beyond to come true and present themselves, and not only that, but unfolding our evolution in two worlds, so one day we can reach the nosso lar of our hearts. Thank you very much.